Deception Circuit EP11, Future Faking, Why Narcissists Promise a Life, They'll Never Give You, VO Scripts, 32 clips. Target, 65-70 words per clip. Josh Voice, about 130 PM. White's 13-14 seconds audio. Redacanturium. They told you where you'd live. They described the house, named the city, talked about children like it was settled. You started to build your entire future around what they were painting. You restructured your career. You let go of other plans, other people. Then it unraveled. And the worst part wasn't the loss. It was realizing the future they promised never existed. This is future faking. Future faking is a manipulation tactic where someone makes vivid, emotionally specific promises about a shared future they have no intention of keeping. Therapists see it most often in relationships with narcissists and people with cluster B personality structures. It's not about miscommunication. It's not optimism. It's a strategic behavior used to keep you anchored in a relationship that is designed to never fully commit. Here's the critical distinction. Ordinary lying is about hiding the past. Future faking is about manufacturing your emotional investment in tomorrow. A liar conceals. A future faker constructs. They build a version of the future so vivid you can feel it, and that imagined reality becomes your trap. You're not just trusting their words. You're trusting the entire life you've imagined based on those words. It starts early, sometimes on the second date. They're already talking about places you'll visit together, restaurants you'll try next month, the way you'll spend holidays. It feels like connection, because specificity feels like commitment. When someone says, "I know a place in Barcelona you'd love and I want to take you there," it lands differently than, "I like you." That specificity is the hook. Specificity is the weapon. Vague promises are easy to dismiss. But when someone describes the couch you'll have in the apartment you'll share, when they name the neighborhood, when they say, "I see us doing this in 5 years," your brain begins to construct that reality. The future becomes concrete. Concreteness creates emotional stakes, and emotional stakes create the attachment they need to retain control. People on the outside say, "Why didn't you just leave?" Because you weren't staying for what existed. You were staying for what was promised. The relationship was partly real and partly a projected future you'd been handed so many times it felt inevitable. Leaving meant abandoning a future you'd already emotionally moved into. That's not weakness. That is a precisely engineered psychological trap working exactly as intended. The cycle works like this. A promise is made. You feel safe, connected, hopeful. Then the promise evaporates. No explanation or a reframe that makes you feel unreasonable for bringing it up. The disappointment registers, but then a new promise arrives. Bigger, often, and your nervous system, trained to hope, accepts it. Each loop tightens your attachment while depleting your trust in your own perception. When you finally confront a broken promise, pay attention to what happens next. A genuine person acknowledges the failure and takes accountability. A future faker does something specific. They either deny the promise was ever made, minimize it as "you're too sensitive," or immediately replace it with a newer, shinier promise. The reset, and most targets, conditioned by hope, accept the new promise and move on. Narcissists need what's called narcissistic supply: attention, admiration, control. But genuine intimacy requires vulnerability and reciprocity they're unwilling to offer. Future faking solves this. The promise of a future keeps you emotionally invested, compliant, and available, without requiring them to actually build anything real. It's not about the house or the wedding or the baby names. It's about keeping you close enough to drain. When someone promises you something exciting, your brain releases dopamine, not when the thing arrives, but when you anticipate it. This is critical. Anticipation is neurologically more powerful than possession. Future fakers exploit this. Every new promise triggers a fresh dopamine hit. Your brain begins to associate them with hope and possibility, even as the actual relationship delivers consistent disappointment underneath the excitement. How do you tell a genuine dreamer from a future faker? Watch behavior over time, not words. A genuine optimist makes promises and takes small steps toward them, even imperfect ones. A future faker makes promises and takes no steps. The gap between what they say and what they do grows wider over time rather than narrower. Action is the only metric that matters here, always. Learn to recognize the almost pattern. It's almost the right time. They're almost ready. Things will be different almost soon. Almost is a holding pattern designed to keep you waiting without giving you grounds to leave. You can't be angry at almost. It implies forward motion. It creates just enough hope to sustain the relationship while ensuring nothing ever actually arrives. Almost is a deliberate strategy. Psychologists use the term fantasy bond to describe what happens when two people bond not to each other, but to the idea of each other. Future faking accelerates this process. You fall in love with who they said they'd be, the relationship you believed was coming, the life on the horizon. When it ends, you grieve a future that never existed, and that grief is completely real. Future faking rewires your decisions while it's happening. You turn down jobs in other cities because of what was promised here. You exit other relationships. You stop planning your own future independently. Your timeline becomes hostage to theirs. These aren't small adjustments. They are major life redirections made on the basis of promises with no foundation. The damage isn't just emotional. It is architectural and real. Behavioral economists call it the sunk cost fallacy. Continuing to invest in something because of what you've already put in, not because of its actual value. Future faking exploits this perfectly. The longer the relationship, the more you've invested. Time, plans, emotional energy, identity. Leaving feels like admitting it was all for nothing. So you stay, the investment deepens, and the trap tightens around you. Here's the damage that doesn't get talked about enough. When you build your identity around a shared future, you lose the boundaries between yourself and the relationship. Your sense of who you are becomes tangled with the life you were promised. When that future dissolves, people often describe it as, "I don't know who I am anymore." That's not a personality flaw. That is by design. The grief after a future-faking relationship is disorienting because it's double grief. You grieve the person and the future simultaneously, and unlike a normal breakup, there's an added layer. The future never existed. You're mourning something that was never real. That cognitive dissonance, the collision of felt reality and actual reality, makes the grief harder to process and harder to explain to anyone around you. Almost universally, targets of future faking blame themselves. You think, if you'd been less needy, more patient, less reactive, maybe the promises would have come true. This is a direct consequence of the manipulation. They conditioned you to believe the gap between promise and delivery was your fault. Your timing, your pressure, your expectations, it wasn't. The gap existed long before you ever walked in. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological pain of holding two contradictory beliefs at once. For future faking targets, it sounds like this: They said they love me and want a future with me, alongside nothing they promised has come true. Your mind can't reconcile the two, so it works overtime to preserve the belief that the promises are real. That's not delusion. That's your brain trying to protect you. Red flag 1. The promise timeline keeps moving. 6 months ago it was, by next year. Now it's, we just need a little more time. Watch the promise horizon. If the goalposts shift consistently, always just out of reach, never anchored to concrete action, that is not circumstance. That is architecture. The horizon exists specifically to keep you walking toward it without ever letting you arrive. Red flag 2. Promises are always conditional. Once things calm down at work, after I deal with this family situation, when I'm in a better headspace, these conditions are not explanations. They are extensions. There is always a new condition waiting behind the current one. If every promise comes attached to a condition that never resolves, the condition is the mechanism, not the obstacle. It's the system. Red flag 3. Zero concrete action. Watch what they do, not what they say. If someone genuinely intends to move in with you, they look at neighborhoods. If they intend to commit, they have the conversation. If they intend to build a future, they make decisions that reflect that future. Talk is not movement. If the only evidence of the future is their words, there is no future. Red flag 4. You feel crazy for wanting follow-through. Pay attention to this one closely. When you bring up a broken promise, a healthy person engages with it. A future faker makes you feel like the problem. Too demanding, too impatient, living too far in the future. If holding someone accountable to their own words makes you feel like the difficult one, something is deeply wrong here. Red flag 5. Broken promises become your fault. This is the most insidious inversion. The promise was theirs. The failure to deliver was theirs. But through a combination of reframing, minimizing, and deflection, you end up apologizing for their failure. You absorb the accountability that belongs to them. And with each repetition, your sense of what you're entitled to expect from a partner collapses further inward. The rule, once you understand future faking, is simple. Evaluate a person only by what they do, not what they say they'll do, not what they've done in the distant past, not what they promise tomorrow. What are they doing right now, this week, this month? That demonstrates movement toward the things they've said. If the answer is consistently nothing, believe the nothing over every word. There's a way to test for future faking without sounding paranoid. Ask for one small, specific, near-term action that aligns with the promise. Not the big thing, a single step. If they're genuine, they'll engage. If they're a future faker, watch the response. Dismissal, sudden vagueness, or irritation that you've asked for specifics. That reaction tells you more than any promise they have ever made. Here's why confronting the pattern almost never works. Future fakers don't see the pattern. Or they do, and have no interest in changing it because it's serving them. Confrontation typically triggers either more promises or a Darvo response, where they become the victim of your accusation. You leave the conversation defending your perception of reality, and nothing changes. It is a deliberately closed system. Leaving a future-faking relationship doesn't feel like freedom, not at first. It feels like loss. Specifically, the loss of a future you had already emotionally inhabited, the house, the life, the version of yourself you were going to become in it. You have to grieve a reality that never existed, and that grief is completely real even though the thing you're grieving wasn't. That takes time. Rebuilding after future faking starts with one thing: reclaiming your own timeline. While the relationship was active, Your future was on hold, waiting for someone else's readiness. Now you begin building a future based only on what you want and what you are actually doing to get it, not what someone else promises. Your timelines, your steps, your choices, your future entirely yours again. There is a particular kind of healing that arrives when you realize the promises you needed from them you can make to yourself, not as a consolation, as a reclamation. You know what you want. You know how to build toward it. You spent months or years being certain of a future. Direct that certainty toward yourself. Watch what becomes possible. That energy always belonged to you. Here's the reframe. The life they promised you. They didn't take it. It still exists. It's just yours now. The house, the city, the version of yourself you were trying to grow into. None of that required them. What future faking actually reveals is the clarity of what you want. And now, without the manipulation distorting your path, you can move toward it entirely on your own terms.